Has anybody ever called you a friend of God because they saw what God was doing in you and through you that benefited you and from you benefited others too? Because the hookup is so tight and so close that it becomes visible in history, not just academic in the head. It is a relationship that is obvious. He says, by works, Abraham was, watch this, justified by faith. By works. Wait a minute, that's an odd term. The Bible talks about justification by faith. Paul talks about that all the time. You're justified by faith. Justified by faith alone. You're justified by faith apart from works. Because he's talking about going to heaven. But now we have a whole different use of the word justification in James 2. He says there's a second justification, by works. The justification by faith has to do with eternal destiny. The justification by works has to do with God's intervention in history, in your life, in our lives, in our circumstances, in our prayers answered, in the power given, in the victory over, in the deliverances, in the circumstances of life. That has to come because you're declared righteous by your work, not by your belief system. He says that his faith was perfected. The word perfected means matured. It developed. His faith grew. You don't grow faith by looking for faith. You grow faith by doing the work. Because by his work, his faith was perfected. It matured. He had a bigger view of God. He had a bigger view of God's power, purpose, intervention. It all grew. If you want more faith, do more work. That is, not just busy work, but the application of biblical truth in life's decisions. That is called obedience in Scripture. When the work is tied to the faith, then the faith grows. In the Olympics, you have high jumpers. They can jump about 8 feet, springing off the ground. But you also have pole vaulters. Pole vaulters can go 18 feet. High jumpers, about 8 feet. Pole vaulters, 18 feet. That's because a pole vaulter has a pole. And when they run and they put the pole in the box, the pole bends and the pole springs them higher than they could ever jump on their own. Work is your pole. He says you can only go so far with faith alone. But when you grab the work and attach it to the faith, the work propels your faith to a higher level than it existed previously. And that work typically is called for in a trial. It's typically called for in a trial. So he says, and Abraham was called a friend of God. Now I know we like to sing the song, I am a friend of God. That's a lioness song. A lot of God's children are not friends of God. To be a friend of God speaks of an intimacy that has been developed because of the growth of faith and your experience of God intervening in your circumstances. If God is not intervening, his presence is not being manifested, it's because the intimacy is not there. But when the intimacy is there, two things happen. God in the Old Testament called Abraham his friend, but then people saw all that God was doing in Abraham and they said, he must be a friend of God. Has anybody ever called you a friend of God because they saw what God was doing in you and through you that benefited you and from you benefited others too? Because the hookup is so tight and so close that it becomes visible in history, not just academic in the head. It is a relationship that is obvious. So a lot of Christians aren't God's friends. Some of you and some of us have kids and they're not our friends. They're our child. But we're not close to them. We don't have that kind of connection to them. So he says, no, Abraham passed the test and he got a deeper experience in history of God's reality in his life because his faith produced work. He then goes to a female illustration. In the same way, was not Rahab the harlot also justified by works when she received the messengers and sent them out by another way? He says, was not Rahab the harlot justified by works when she received the spies and turned them out another way? Okay, so you all remember the biblical story, Joshua fit the battle of Jericho, okay? So in the book of Joshua, God tells Joshua to go to this pagan city and he's going to judge it. So they sent in a couple of spies to spy out the land. Rahab lived in the red light district. Wherever you see Rahab's name in the New Testament, her occupation is always attached to it. When the spies came, they thought the red light district would be a good place not to be detected. Christians would have had a hard problem with them spies. But they go to the red light district figuring this way.
Rahab była właścicielką domu publicznego. A gdy wysłannicy przyszli, powiedziała, że słyszała o ich Bogu i wierzy w Niego. Wzięła ich pod swój dach z wiarą. Władze odkryły, że szpiedzy są w domu Rahab.
Odkryli, że szpiedzy byli u niej w domu, lub przynajmniej o tym myśleli, i przyszli grzmocąc w jej drzwi.
Przyszli do niej i zapytali, czy to prawda? Ona skłamała, mówiąc absolutnie nie. Teraz wiem, co myślicie. Czy to znaczy, że kłamstwo jest w porządku? Czasem tak. Gdy stajesz przed dwoma grzechami, musisz wybrać ten, który przyniesie Bogu większą chwałę.
And you have to make a choice because either choice is a sin. So you make the choice where God will get the greatest glory. She believed that it would be better to spare the life.
Rahab wierzyła, że lepiej jest ocalić życie szpiegów, niż ich wydać, więc skłamała. Nie tylko to, ale wypuściła ich przez inne wyjście, przez okno za pomocą szkarłatnej nici. Szpiedzy powiedzieli, ponieważ to zrobiłaś, swoje uczynki, gdy przybyliśmy, powiedziałaś, że wierzysz. Ale dzięki temu, co zrobiłaś, dzięki uczynkom, zgromadź rodziny w domu, a gdy miasto zostanie zniszczone, ty i twoi bliscy zostaniecie ocaleni. W historii Jozuego jest wspomniane, że jej dom był wybudowany w mur miasta. To oznacza, że gdy mury Jericha upadły, fragment muru stojący z jej domem został ocalony. Fragment muru stojący z jej domem został ocalony. To świadectwo, że Bóg może cię ochronić w historii, gdy wszystko się wali wokół ciebie.
That God can cover you in history when everything is collapsing around you. God can cover you in history when everything is falling apart around you and your family, because everybody in the house was covered. But not only that,
Bóg nie tylko ocalił jej życie, zmienił jej dziedzictwo i przeznaczenie.
He changed her legacy and he changed her destiny. Because
Rahab,
the hoe.
nierządnica, dama nocy.
Rahab the harlot. Rahab the prostitute. Rahab the lady of the night. Where the Bible never lets you forget
Jej poprzednia
that
praca
was her
zawsze jest
background.
przypominana w
Because every
Biblii, ale
time
gdy
her name
Izraelici
shows
wyszli,
up, her previous occupation shows up with it. But it says,
zabrała ze
when
sobą męża,
Israel left,
architekta,
she
który
left with
budował
him.
Jeruzalem i się z nią ożenił.
She ran into an architect who put together the architectural structure for the city of Jerusalem. The architect fell in love with a hoe. The architect fell in
Architekt
love with a
zakochał się w
harlot.
dziwce.
He married Rahab. When you read Matthew chapter
W
1,
Ewangelii Mateusza w rodowodzie Jezusa imię Rahab mężatnicy jest wymienione jako w linii Jezusa Chrystusa.
the harlot's name is there. She's in the line of Jesus Christ. When you read Hebrews
W liście
chapter
do
11,
Hebrajczyków, rozdział
and
11,
it tells
gdzie
you
opowiada
about
się o
all the
ludziach
great
wiary,
people of faith,
imię Rahab również
Rahab's
się
name is
pojawia.
all up in there. So what God
Bóg mówi,
tells
że
you
możesz
is,
mieć złe
you may have
pochodzenie,
had a
ale jeśli
bad
twoja wiara
background,
podejmie działanie,
but if your
może
faith
zmienić
will
twoją
go to
przyszłość,
work, I
przeznaczenie,
can
twoje
change your
miejsce,
future
dokąd
destiny.
trafisz.
I can change where you wind up. Because her faith was working
Jej
with
wiara
her work.
współpracowała z jej uczynkami.
She
Nie
didn't
tylko
just
wierzyła,
believe
ale
it,
działała.
she moved on it. And when she moved,
I kiedy działała,
history
historia
got
się
changed.
zmieniła. Przeznaczenie się
Destiny got
zmieniło.
changed.
Tożsamość się zmieniła.
Identity got changed.